Peace, Infinite Tom, diving deep once again. I don't know, don't ask. We are living in crazy, turbulent times right now where we've shifted into this information age, and we have technologies like the internet, which has given people more access to information instantaneously like we never have before. Things like this have contributed to more and more people finally waking up from this age-old slumber we've been in for so long, where we're starting to see past the bullshit that society has forced down our throat. Of course, there's always going to be ignorant people. We're never going to wake up. But that being said, we're still going through an intense spiritual awakening on a global scale. As many of you know, going through an awakening isn't all peaches and roses. In fact, it can be a very intense, brutal transition where we just never look at life the same way again. So I want to share with you guys 7 signs that I personally went through during my awakening phase, which is something that is very common and that many people go through, so maybe you guys can relate. And I know it can sound very pretentious and hippie saying spiritual awakening, like we're ascending to the heavens and our heart chakra is radiating love for the whole world, or I don't know, some shit like that. But yeah, forget about the semantics. When I talk about spiritual awakening, just think of waking up from this matrix and being more aware of the self and reality, right? Being more conscious, if you will. Sign number 1, depression and or anxiety. Believe it or not, going through a depression and anxiety and things like this is a very common symptom of waking up. And don't let your brain trick you into thinking that this means you're weak or something like that. This is very normal that many of us will go through. It's just part of the process. I remember going through a very heavy depression for so many years, which was accompanied by this deep sadness and despair, you know, like just knowing how fucked up the world is and feeling this hopelessness and emptiness, right? But looking on hindsight, I realize now that this was a period of deep self-inquiry that catalyzed my awakening, right? This gave me a very deep understanding of the nature of suffering and really going within my own psyche, which in turn helped me understand humanity on a deeper level. There's nothing like going through tough times like a depression that teaches you more about yourself and humanity. And it's like, how am I supposed to help people out of their suffering and their depression if I haven't personally gone through it myself? And this is something that many times builds character. And I'm not saying that you have to go through depression to have character and to help people. But I'm just saying that if you do go through this, that just look on the positive side and utilize it, right, for your own growth. Like, depression can be a bitch, but it is also a great teacher. And just remember that we live in a very fucked up, backwards, insane society that doesn't really help this issue. Like, it's no wonder that depression is like the biggest health epidemic right now. Sign number 2, you stop enjoying TV like you used to. Oh no, but I like TV and video games. I don't want to give that up. It's like, mate, you don't have to give up anything. Like, giving up TV doesn't make you spiritual. That's bullshit. And it's not about you having to give it up to be spiritual, but it's more when you're waking up and you're going on this path of self-development and spiritual awakening, whatever you want to call it, that most of the time you're naturally going to just lose interest in it for the most part. This doesn't mean that I never watch TV or play video games, but for the most part, I've drastically cut down on this. Trust me, I was the biggest TV video game addict out there, where I got to the point where I turned into like this soulless ghoul that hadn't seen daylight for years, that when I finally did go outside, which is usually just to pick up weed and food, really, it was like in the game Fallout 3 when you finally step out of Vault 101 and you see the wasteland for the first time, and it's like... But I remember during my process of waking up that I just stopped enjoying TV and video games like I used to, and I started to gravitate more towards things that helped me with my growth in some way. And I remember thinking that there was something seriously wrong with me because this was my life. Seriously, to the point where I felt like I was having an identity crisis. Like, it was always my dream as a kid to always play video games as an old man, you know, having a house of myself, smoking weed, and having the freedom to do that whenever I want. And then I stopped enjoying it, and I'm like, what the fuck? What do I do now? And, you know, it forced me to really look at other avenues. So, you know, of course, in hindsight, this was a good thing, but during the time, it was, yeah, was not a nice process. You start to question everything. Wait. Why are we fighting each other based on our skin color because we were born in a different geographical location, which is separated by invisible lines in the dirt? why are we idolizing people that we don't know while impressing people that we don't like and living a life that isn't our own but living to other people's expectations and sacrificing our happiness for it? I don't quite understand. I'm in Thailand right now. There's a fucking rooster in the background. But it was questions like this that started to arise in my mind, where I was questioning the system, how things were run, living my life, how people live their life, and just the nature of reality itself, just everything. I started realizing that we're all human with an extremely limited perspective, and maybe we don't actually know shit. And you think that this is common sense, but common sense isn't that common these days. This reminds me, which is like really funny thinking about it now, that like when I was a kid, I looked at adults like, you know, they were like these responsible human beings that had everything figured out. It's like, what? It's like, oh, I can't wait to grow up and have responsibilities and have everything in order and blah, 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 blah. It's like, it's so naive and dumb. It's like, we're all fucking children. Even the concept of an adult is ridiculous to me. Like, you know, I'm 25 right now and I just can't, an adult? Like, I got called sir the other month by a kid. I'm like, oh no, I'm getting old. Oh, it's like, sir, I'm a fucking kid like you, and we all are. The only difference between adults is like they pretend like they actually know shit, and they pretend like they have everything figured out. But the truth is, we're all children, and we're always growing and learning. We never have shit figured out. But I understand that in this game society that we have to at least pretend like we know something, right? I get it. But during this awakening process, I was like questioning reality, that, you know, that there's so much more to life than what our physical senses can perceive in this physical dimension, you know what I mean? The universe and the human brain is infinitely complex, where we're never going to really figure out what this whole thing's about, but it's fun as hell trying. Start to go towards authenticity and away from superficiality. You don't have to be a super talented detective to figure out that most humans in this day and age are superficial.
No shit, Sherlock.
We judge each other based on superficial values like looks, social status, achievements, money, than we do out of inner beauty, wisdom, kindness, compassion. That's like super gay hippie shit, man. You may have always seen past this bullshit your whole life, or maybe you realize this later in your life during this spiritual awakening. But a strong symptom for me during this waking up process was moving away from this superficiality mindset and more towards authenticity. You know, you start to value people's uniqueness over like this synthetic carbon copy of this pop culture, right? And like me, you may find yourself being very antisocial and just getting repelled by a lot of these superficial people and their bullshit. Personally, I find zero interest in going to a bar and drinking beer or dancing at a nightclub or just things like this where there's just so many fake people. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with going to a bar. This is just how I feel personally. I would much rather have like an authentic experience where it's going to contribute to my growth, or even if it's having fun, I'd much rather go out camping with a couple of my closest friends and just have a deep conversation, you know what I mean? Like, that's more my shit. Sadness and compassion for the world. This was a huge shift for me because I used to be very numb to my own emotions, and I didn't give a shit about anybody. I didn't give a shit about the world. I was very unempathetic. I was basically like this sociopathic asshole, really. But now when I look on hindsight, I was actually always a very sensitive kid, and to overcompensate that so I can survive in high school and all that kind of stuff, I built all these extra walls, and there was a lot of layers, right, where I thought I was like this badass rebel that didn't give a shit and all that kind of stuff. Until I had a very profound experience which catalyzed my spiritual awakening, where it really helped me look beyond myself, right? In other words, I actually started to give a shit. So like me in this stage, you may start to feel very strong feelings of empathy for your fellow humanity. And a very common symptom of waking up is having hypersensitivity, right? Being more sensitive to others and your own emotions. Something that is greatly lacking and undervalued in our society. In fact, it's frowned upon, right? You're considered to be weak if you have all this empathy and compassion and you're vulnerable and all that kind of stuff. And I know it's very hippie to say, but it's important to look at our fellow human beings as human beings. Like, you know, we all have emotions, aspirations, and dreams. We're just born in a different culture, and we're raised to believe that we're different and separate from each other. Living beyond yourself and serving others is such an important part of what can truly make us fulfilled and happy. you know, at least in my opinion. You know, like, it's so easy to get lost in your own shit and just block out everything and just not give a shit about the world. And of course, I'm not saying go stress yourself out and be constantly aware of all the bullshit problems and conflicts of the world and be in this, oh, I'm trying to save the world mentality that is very draining and unproductive. Focus on being you and be the change that you want to see. A wise man once said, give a fuck, but not too many fucks. I don't even know where I heard that from. It sounds like what a wise man would say. The need to find actual meaning to your life. This was another big one for me. I remember in my younger years that one of my dreams was just to win the lottery so I didn't have to work and I can just stay at home, play video games, smoke weed, and do whatever the fuck I want. Now, of course I wanted to be happy and have meaning to my life, but this wasn't on my highest priority, definitely not. That is until I started to wake up and go on this path. And this is when finding meaning and living my life purpose became very, very important for me. And a very common symptom which many people go through while they're waking up is that they get this urge to move, right? They have this call to adventure. Maybe you just get sick and bored of being in your environment, hanging out with the same friends, being with the same people, learning the same shit, being in the same location, and I don't know, just living this habitual cycle over and over and over and over again, and each day is just a slight iteration of the last. So maybe you want to travel or even move somewhere permanently. Maybe you want to get out of this ordinary world, right? Which is a concept what Joseph Campbell came up with in the hero's journey, which is like everything that you know, and you want to go to the special world, which is like the unknown, the unconscious. This is a very critical step in my life anyways, where man, traveling can be so therapeutic and be so beneficial for your growth and your spiritual awakening, where you meet new people, you learn new things, you learn about new cultures, you know what I mean? But again, I'm just speaking about my personal journey. Become self-aware. When you wake up, you start to become more aware of yourself, your thought patterns, your behavior, the world around you. This is what Buddhists would refer to as mindfulness. Like me, maybe you used to be super reactive to others around you and be in this victim mentality where you blamed your own emotional reaction on the outside world. I used to be so aggressive and hateful towards people that I didn't like. I hate hippies, I hate jocks, I hate this, I hate that, I hate this group of people, that group of people, blah. And especially when people are too happy all the time. Fuck those people. I'm sweating bullets here. I don't want to put the fan on though because it's going to be too noisy. I just hope that rooster is not too annoying for you guys. But yeah, anyways, I used to actually think like that. Basically, I was opposed to anyone who had a different belief system than mine or a different lifestyle than what I lived. And I thought that it was entirely them who was causing this internal emotional reaction within me. It's like, what? But eventually, as I was waking up, I realized that my emotional reaction against other people had nothing to do with them. Like, the only reason I hated hippies, religious people, and like really super happy, positive people was because it reflected my lack of that happiness, that lack of freedom within myself, right? And I was just projecting my own insecurities onto them. And that's how it works, guys. If anyone pisses you off for anything, trust me, it's nothing to do with them. You just haven't resolved that part of yourself. You haven't owned that part of yourself. So anytime I see someone who has like, I don't know, like a Brady Bunch family, who's always happy and whistling and smiling and laughing and who were really charismatic and all that kind of stuff, it just reminded me, unconsciously of course, of my own misery. But anyway, during this stage of self-awareness, I started to become more aware of my thought patterns, my behaviors, my language, and just the negative personality traits that I had. And this was not an easy process by any means. And this is one of my favorite quotes from Carl Jung when he said that there is no coming into consciousness without pain. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, in order to avoid facing their own soul. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Whoa. Dude, that motherfucker was deep. Shit, the cops are after me. But anyways, I started to realize that everything is in my power and that my life situation was completely on me, based on the thought patterns, my mindset, and the choices that I make every day. I started to become more aware of what I was putting into my body and my consciousness, i.e. diet and stimulus I was allowing into my mind. So that started to change drastically, thank God. And during this stage, you may find yourself losing old friends and stuff like that, man. Like, man, I have the people that I used to hang out with in high school, it's like, I've seen them in years. And it's not like, oh, I think they're bad people or anything like this, but you just grow apart, right? And if you want to grow and be happy and fulfilled, that maybe hanging out with negative, unconscious people isn't going to serve you. That's it, folks. But I'd love to know more about your guys' journey. So comment below on any signs that you have experienced during this spiritual awakening, or maybe signs that you're going through right now. Remember to like and share this video around. I would love to grow this community and this channel, but I can't do it without you guys. So the more you like and interact and share this content around, the more we can grow together. The more we can grow together and become one, you know? I don't know. And of course, subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, and click on the notification bell, which will notify you of my next upload. That's it, guys. Have an awesome day, and I'll catch you on the next video. Peace. Whew! I can finally put the fan on again.